Okay, I have gotten this really great die cut, which is woody, a forest. And one of the things I like to do when I get them, obviously I can use this for die cutting cardstock and paper with my Big Shot. But what I like to do is take one piece of foam. This is foam that I got years ago at the Dollar Tree. And it is a 4 by 6, so it fits really perfectly. So what I do is I cut it out, but before I take it off of the metal piece, when it's still sitting on there, just like that, first I put one piece, actually it goes like this, I put one piece of, well, 3 pieces of packing tape, because one piece would not fit. And then I gently pull it away, and then when I notice any little pieces that didn't get stuck on the tape, I poke them with a toothpick or something through the holes to make sure that every little tiny piece sticks onto the tape, which would be this part of the tape, you see, making sure. So I have a positive and a negative. I'm trying to think of which would be the positive, which would be the negative, but it depends on how you're using it. If you're using it as a rubber stamp, it's one thing. If you're using it to create impressions in clay, that's another. So now what I'm doing here is teasing apart. First I start at this end and figure out which parts that you're going to take. And in this case, since the main piece had a frame around it, I knew that that's the part that I would leave on the whole piece of foam. By the way, that has tape on the back of it, as I said. So now I am doing my usual pulling apart. A thumbnail works perfectly to make sure that these bits that would otherwise fall out and be useless stay, I think that's what I'm going to do, stay on the tape so that I have exactly, let's see, I've got to figure out which part stays on one end. Some of them are a little bit, but as you move it down, and they do stretch a bit, but they return back to shape, and I think maybe this one here I've got to, this one here I'm running into a little bit of a problem because part of it fell apart. I will tell you though that when that happens, it's not the end of the world. It works really great as, see, this one's here is supposed to look like this one, and it's a little messed up a little bit. But anyway, because the tape is very strong, so here I tease out this corner and then this piece. And sometimes it's best to turn it around and start working sideways. So it depends on, you know, what's working the best for me at the time and which piece I want to pull. Yeah. So it's pulling the piece apart. So what I'm going to have is a piece that will stamp or create impressions where only the outline is inked and the background is not, or the background is inked if you're using it as a stamp. But I mostly like to use these as texture rollouts. It work with polymer clay, and they would go through the pasta machine. Actually, they're so thin that you could actually put the clay on there. And one thing, you have to put powder. When I'm done, all the taped areas on both sides will be coated with a thin coat of either cornstarch or baby powder. And that is so the clay, whether it's polymer clay or ceramic type clay, earthenware or whatever, doesn't stick to the tape because that would not work out really well. So you have to treat them that way. Anyway, it's not a big job. It's sort of fun. It's a bit of like a puzzle. It's like working a puzzle. and making sure there's the one that's cut out. What I'm trying to do is get, because I really, if I use this side, I will get a raised image for the tree. You see, it'll be raised up from the clay. But the other side would create an indented image in the clay, where the tree would be indented and only the background areas would be raised. You'd be surprised that sometimes with jewelry, if you forget that this is a forest, this area creates a wonderful, if I showed you that, you wouldn't know that it was a forest, but it creates a nice abstract design, as would these. If I push them into the clay, you wouldn't really know what they were, but this side here creates just a nice abstract design. So there's lots of ways you can use these, and I make a ton of them. Every time I get a new die, I definitely do this. The foam is like cheap, and I stocked up on it a couple years ago when Dollar Tree had these. I stocked up on a whole bunch. They were 32 pieces for $1. Each of these 4x6 sheets there were 32 of them in the package. So I use these for so many things I cannot even begin to tell you, and I have boxes of them. I mostly use them for texture and clay, but if I am working on a card, and I want to use these as like a rubber stamp, these work great. And I have another video that I have everything covered with powder, both sides. And what I do is, once I get a fairly decent covering, mostly I want to get in all of the crevices, I just put them together like this. And then using my fingernail, just like I took them out, I give them a snap, just to make sure the powder gets dispersed where I want it. And for very little time and effort, I have something that could be used as a stamp or two different kinds of texture sheets. So there you have it.